Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities Behind Black Business. And we have Mr. Anthony Travis, better known as the Tax Dollar Doctor, on our show tonight. That would be a good name, right?
No,
He's our tax doctor, and he's been really beating the bushes here, trying to address this issue with how we're funding our schools. He's been on a number of programs, and he's asked to come back on here. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more because, based on what's happening, this is going to be a huge task, a
yes,
very huge undertaking. It's going to be a process,
yes.
and but he is devoted to what is going on, and I really want to thank you for the work and the effort that you are putting in regarding this matter.
Thank you.
That's right. And as you know, we're a nonprofit organization here, Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. And we are working to enhance the awareness and support of our Black businesses. And these tax dollars have a huge impact on our Black businesses. They impact our Black businesses directly. They impact our Black businesses indirectly in terms of what happens to us as taxpayers and customers. And so it's all relative. And so we really want you to support our Black businesses because our Black businesses are being affected by all of this as well. And we bring a Black business to you every Wednesday night, or we have a topic of discussion that is very important to our Black businesses. And that's why we have this podcast every Wednesday night. We have done some other work in terms of helping get websites and different supports that some of our businesses need. But with this podcast, we're able to bring our people directly to you to let you know who is behind these businesses, what they are doing, and the successes and the challenges that they are having, and how relevant they are in our community. And so that's why we do this podcast every week. And on our podcast, we let you know that we are great supporters of our bookstores. We support the number. We used to have 22 Black bookstores here in Chicago. They have grown from two. We had gone down to two, and they have grown from that. And so the ones that we have, we want you to support them. And so our bookstore of the month is The Book Joint, who's located at 6900 South Stony Island. And their website is thebookjoint.com. And they're open Wednesday through Sunday. They're open Wednesday 11 through 7 until Saturday. And then on Sunday, they're open from 12 to 4. It's a wonderful little spot here in South Shore. Please support the Book Joint. And we go a step further. As you know, we have a book giveaway. And Patricia Percy, your book, Back of the Hiring Line, is on its way to you if you have not received it yet. And thank you for subscribing and supporting Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. And our book of this month is How Black History Can Save Your Life. This is a book that is written by Ernest Krim, and he was a victim of a hate crime, and he delved into the history of our people. He looked at those individuals and those groups of people who have fought against injustices in this country. And out of that, he's learned about resistance and perseverance and how to combat racism. And so that's what this book is about. So if you want to win a copy of How Black History Can Save Your Life, subscribe to our website at rrgbc.org, and you can become eligible to win this book. We also ask you to continue to support our local financial institution, the Southside Community Federal Credit Union, which is located at 55th and Wentworth, right there in the shopping mall. They have all types of products that they're offering now, and we should be taking advantage of them. You do not have to spend the dollars that you're spending in some of these payday loan stores. And they're not just interested in saving or making money off of you. They want to help you to get a handle on your finances. They want to help you to spend your money in the best way possible for yourself. So if you go to the Southside Community Federal Credit Union, you can get credit counseling. They'll work with you there. They have products for business owners. They've got some micro loans. They have some personal loans. Uh, they have car loans. And so they have different types of loans that we need. And they look at you as an individual, not just as a number coming through the door. So please support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. And then please go to our website at rrgbc.org where you can make a donation to help our cause. We do have an expense with the work that we do. And so we do ask for and accept donations that can be made right there on our website. We also have an online store where you can make a purchase that would help us as well. Okay, so Anthony, I know you have been on a number of shows and a number of podcasts here, and perhaps since the last time you have been on, you can give us an update. I know you were working on trying to get this to the floor with the Speaker of the House, and I would like for you to give us an update on where we are in terms of this property tax issue.
Let me tell you what happened.
Mm-hmm.
We spent the last 2 weeks, we spent 4 days in Springfield with the senators. And then last week, we spent 1 day in Springfield with the state reps. I went to the speaker's office, and as I was sitting out in the lobby, a whole bunch of folks came through. The Speaker Pro Tem, Cam Buckner, another person in leadership, Maurice West from Rockford, and Nicholas Smith from the South Side. They all in leadership. So they came through the speaker's office and they had to hurry up, get to the floor. Some other folks came in to see the speaker and they went to the back. So there's nobody in the office in the waiting area but me. I looked up, the Capitol Police come through the door, come over to where I was and said, they want you out of here.
Mm.
So he escorted me out of the speaker's office. And so Saturday morning, I was on Dorothy Tillman's show and I laid out what happened. And so that morning, I was out in Proviso at the Democratic Party regular monthly meeting, which the speaker is the township committeeman for the Democrats. And so Representative Ford, he said, I heard somebody on radio this morning saying that the tax doctor was kicked out of the speaker's office. So the speaker was standing right there by me. He said, well, I didn't do that. Well, it's your office. So if you didn't do it, who had the power to do that? That's what I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And then the speaker told me to my face, taxpayers, I'm not going to call your bill. Your bill will raise people's income tax by 137%. Hear me, folks. That is a scare tactic. Because number one, the way this bill is written by the LRB, it is designed to create what they call a feasibility study to see could we make the transition. Mm-hmm. Now, we're looking at income tax, other local state streaming taxes, not limited to the estate tax, real estate transfer tax, the cannabis tax, use and occupation tax, and capital gain tax. The study shall examine other states that do not primarily fund schools through the property tax system and propose spending cuts or an increased revenues to facilitate the change. So, what the bill tells me is that we're not just going to use the income tax as a vehicle. We're going to look at the whole state and look at a multitude of ways. I created the octopus, which is another vehicle that we can utilize to raise capital for our schools. Then AI, Gary, who was on last week, used AI. AI came out with between 14 and 15 different ways to raise revenue other than property taxes. So when you look at the bigger picture, and I would say to the speaker, how did you pull 137% out your butt? Okay, this hold on, Gary. Yeah, I sent you the link.
Oh, you did? Okay, let me go ahead.
All right.
Okay, let me see.
And so we have to understand we're being played.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. We're being played by Springfield. And I want taxpayers to understand, if we don't get these schools off the property tax system, when you talk about coming on here on Wednesdays to support the business community, they won't be here.
Mm-hmm.
They are leaving like they saw the boogeyman. And folks, once these folks leave, they're not coming back unless the environment is wholesome for them to come back. And the only way for us to survive in this wickedness, we got to overhaul this system. We don't have no choice. So, hear me when I say, brothers and sisters and taxpayers, if you pay rent, you pay property taxes. Let's make that crystal clear. If you pay rent, you pay property taxes in your rent. Because the person who owns that property, he ain't gonna eat them taxes. You gonna eat them. So we need you to join us, because we have a tremendous fight on our hands. We're gonna be at Argyle Garden this coming Saturday from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. I want you to bring your tax bills with you. Join our army. Folks, we must save our state. We must save the state by stopping grandma from losing their property over nobody should lose their property over taxes. Folks, Indiana consolidated their schools in 1959 and 1960. Now they fund their schools by the general fund. That's right, folks. When you cross the street, you're in Indiana. Their property taxes are much lower than ours. Why? There you go, Gary. Why? Because they realize having reasonable taxes is how you sustain your municipalities, how you sustain your state. New Jersey and Illinois, we're like a horse and pony show. We run neck and neck when it comes to taxes. But what we're saying, in order to make New Jersey affordable, they say you got to consolidate school districts. In order to make Illinois affordable, we must consolidate school districts. Also, we must liquidate the bulk of these units of government down to no more than 2,500. Folks, that's all you need. And when you do the math, comparing Florida to us, we got 1,900,000 students, folks. And we got 856 school districts. It makes no sense. Now you compare us to Florida. They got 2,838,000 students. Folks, they only got 70 school districts.
And
70.
don't we have, I have read, now I'm not sure how accurate this is, but we have like around 40 districts that only have one school in them each.
Yeah,
It's,
it's something like that.
I
Well,
actually read that we had about 40 school districts, and each one of those districts only had maybe about one school in each of them, and their student population was
less
no
than
more than
100.
about
Yeah,
130.
yeah.
That's really bad.
So we have a large funding gap going on, one of the largest funding gaps between the rich and the poor. Because if you figure, if it's one school district and 40 school districts, and one district, it has one school, you best believe that's one of those schools that just has everything.
Well, you look at it from a perspective. We live in Cook County. And in Cook County, we have 140 school districts. That's in Cook County. Okay. And then you look at Fort Heights.
Mm.
Fort Heights have two schools, less than 1,000 students, and the CEO is getting almost 400,000. District 148, two schools, less than 1,000 students. He's getting 500,000 now. Plus, Riverdale, Dalton have two separate school districts too.
And I think it's only one school in Riverdale.
Yeah,
Maybe, maybe two.
well, it's
Maybe.
two school districts.
But I'm talking about number of schools.
Right, it's two schools in Riverdale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and these two different school districts should be one.
Right.
Okay, and if you go to Proviso out west, you have 14 school districts in Proviso. Okay, it should probably be one. Okay, but this is the issue. It comes down to, as I've always heard, this concept called local control. And I served as a LSC member at Kenwood Academy when my daughter went to Kenwood Academy. I was on the local school council. What that experience taught me was that even if you decrease the amount of school districts in this state, you can have a local school council in every school, and the parents and the community will still be in charge of their school.
Mm-hmm.
The money will come from the state. Therefore, there'll be no more property taxes, and grandma, grandpa wouldn't lose their homes. The business people will not have to flee Illinois because we will have taxes under control. Okay, that's a good thing.
And then you
But the
would for sure.
sad thing is the fact that we don't have the elected officials in Springfield willing to do what it's going to take to change this system. Now, those of you who live in Chicago, CTU voted for that contract. So they're going to get a 14% increase over the next 3 years. That also add to their pension problems. Okay. Now, I stated before, I would not have given them a contract. This was a golden opportunity for the mayor to bring everybody to the table and say, we need property tax reform, we need pension reform, and these are statewide issues. But he didn't do that. Now, by giving them those 3-year contracts at that 14%, you just added more fuel to the fire. Because eventually, you're going to have to come to reckon with the pension crisis that we got. We're talking about $146 billion unfunded liability.
Okay, let me let Gary chime in here.
Yeah, one thing I want to ask you.
Thank you, Gary. This is Gary.
Yes, thank you. I was talking to somebody. I was talking about Thaddeus's. What's Thaddeus' last name? He has a bill to remove the property taxes altogether. And then there was another conversation, and they did talk about consolidation, and with 2 areas, and as it turned out, they claimed that the taxes actually went up when they consolidated. Now, these are the kind of things that's running around. I don't know if that is going to be able to make that, get rid of the property taxes altogether, because that seems like a far-fetched from anything, considering, the kind of roadblocks we run into trying to do what we want to do, what should be done. So I don't know. Have you looked at some of this stuff?
Yeah, I looked at his bill. His bill is asking IDOR, that's the Department of Revenue,
right,
and the Governor Budget and Management Team, to look at, just like our bill, it's a feasibility study to see if we can make that transition. It would be beautiful to do away with property taxes altogether. And it can be done because this here is the State of Illinois Constitutional Book. Article 9, Section 1. The state legislators are responsible for raising revenues. Nobody else. They didn't supposed to give that away, bargain it away. Now, under Thaddeus' bill, you do away with property taxes, then the legislators have to follow Article 9, Section 1, where they would have to raise revenue statewide from a multitude of streams and send money back to the different units of government. That's the way it was originally designed. And if they would have kept it like that, we wouldn't be having these issues today.
Is there any way to go back and recoup some of the streams of revenue that we lost, like with the parking meters, the toll roads?
No, you can't. You can't do that because, unfortunately, you are up under a binding contract.
Yeah.
And Chicago tried to do that, and the court's not going to allow you to do that.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad deal.
It was a very bad deal.
It was a very bad deal. And Davey sat there, did that crazy stuff, while the aldermen sat down there and sat back and watched it happen.
Because they need that money. Because they should have managed it themselves and collected themselves.
Yes,
that's what they should have done.
They would have made more money,
a lot more
in the long run, than what they're doing now.
Yeah,
but let's get back to
Okay.
the issue at hand, because what we need the taxpayers to understand is that your state legislator, your senator and your two reps, you need to be on the phone calling their office from the district office to Springfield. Send them an email message. We want you to overhaul this system. And you say to them, the hell with what the speaker is saying, that he don't want to entertain this feasibility study. There's nothing in this bill that will raise your income tax 137%, like the speaker said. But we do know for a fact that inaction create a terrible outcome. I just saw this morning. I got up 4 o'clock this morning looking at a story that came across my phone. We lost $355 billion due to folks leaving this state over the past 10 to 20 years. That's a lot of money. And that's because we don't want to overhaul the system. And in 2020, when the governor spoke at his State of State address, he gave us 3 marching orders, 3 words: consolidation, liquidation, and the transformation of this system. He told both parties across the aisle, come together and fix this stuff. He said property taxes are too high.
This is your governor.
This is the governor.
The governor.
But I say to the governor, you fell short too, because the governor gave more attention to his pension reform task force than he did to property tax task force. His right hand man that was running the pension for him, I know him very personally, and we communicate all the time. He said, Travis, I ended up with 2 out of 653 separate police and fire pensions. He said, I only wanted 1, but I had to live with 2, because that's all I could get. But what I'm saying to the citizens of our state, and I get kicked around because people don't like my harshness when I talk about the pensions. And I say to my people, either you're going to come to the table and we work this thing out together, or you're going to look up and we're going to be just like what happened in Michigan. Michigan ended up getting a quarter on the dollar when they lost their pensions. And I was told by someone that was just close to the governor, they might get 50 cents on the dollar in Illinois. But my position to the taxpayers, why should we wait till the Titanic sink before we come together and work this thing out together? I don't want to see nobody lose their pension. And let me make that perfectly clear. But I also realize this system cannot sustain itself. And that's why people like us, the adults in the room, have to come together and say, look, folks, either we gonna work together, or we're gonna sit back and the ship is gonna sink. And that's where we're headed, folks.
Well, I think that remark uh, about the increase that we would see, in the taxes was a scare tactic.
Yes.
It also sounds like a remark that was made very loosely because you have to look at so many other different factors before you can say exactly what's going to happen to the income taxes. Because I did notice that there are different ways and different avenues that we have to look at when you're talking about doing this consolidation,
Yes.
or there are different ways of trying to change the system, and dealing with the income taxes and the state taxes. That's all a part of it, but there's other things to look at as well. The TIF funds,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what's happening with the TIF funds, what's happening with the lottery money that's on the table, what's happening with the marijuana money that is on the
Casinos.
table. See, when he says something like that, it's like he's not even trying to touch any of this,
Mm-hmm.
not even trying to touch any of these things. He's just going to throw that out there and say what it's going to do. But what about all of those types of additional funds that have been put on the table, and how can they? And that's what they were supposed to have put on the table to do.
Well,
Right. And the other thing is,
go ahead. Go ahead, Gary.
the other thing is this. Now we're talking about a feasibility study.
Mm-hmm.
This is not even say just go out and make a change. If they don't want to do a feasibility study, there's a problem, because if you're not willing to investigate and see what you can do, there's something else going on here. We need to get
Mhm.
in their heads and find out why they don't. A feasibility study is something you always do. You do that before you do anything. You might
That's
come
right.
out with a result that says, well, we can't do it. But I think they're afraid they're going to find out they can do it, and then they may not want to do it. I think that's what it is. And
They
why
don't
can't
want to
we do
make
a
the
feasibility
changes.
study? We we can do a feasibility study if they don't get on board. We can get somebody to do it for us,
Well,
which
maybe
we
the
might have to
people are going to
do.
have to get together to the people are going to have to get together to do that. And you also mentioned the impact on the different government agencies. There needs to be some consolidating there.
Yes.
There's a lot of
We don't
consolidation
need
that
all of
needs to
these
happen.
government agencies that we have.
No, you sure don't.
So I
You
think
don't.
the initial response is resistance, but I think it's inevitable. And this is what people do need to, at the very least, call and let them know we need a change in our system, and we need to know what you plan to do about it.
Exactly. And one of the things I wanted to talk to, I didn't get a chance to talk to the speaker by myself, but one of the things I want to ask him is, what is your solution for this problem that could only get worse?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's your solution?
What
What's
is
your
your
long
solution?
term solution? Not people getting funds together to help people pay their taxes. Not that's like, putting a band-aid on a gaping wound, and it's bleeding all over the place. You putting band-aids on it. What's your long-term solution for this problem? If he doesn't have one, then he's really not doing his job, because his job is to make sure bad things won't happen to the constituency, and he doesn't seem to care. So, I didn't even want to get into it when we had the meeting the other day, because I didn't get a chance. And the thing is, when people act the way he does, and it's like, I don't know what they're thinking about. You should think about what you're saying. You should think about the future, because he can't be thinking about 2 or 3 months ahead. He should be thinking about 10 years ahead. That's what he should be thinking. And what's going to happen 10 years from now if we don't do anything? How many people are going to leave this state, and the tax burden is not going to change?
Well,
You know,
maybe he is looking 10 years ahead, and doesn't care about what
He'll be
happens to
retired,
the
huh?
to the people here. And that's ultimately what's going to happen. I'm not going to do nothing, and in 10 years they'll just be gone.
Yeah. And then
is that the plan?
This is the scary part, because what Gary just pointed out is that inaction is just as dangerous as my mayor calling me stubborn and radical because of my way of thinking. And the speaker is my state rep. And when I talked to him about consolidation and liquidation and cutting this stuff down, he said, "You sound like a Republican." He said, your way of thinking is too extreme. That's what he said to me. And then to show you the madness, after Bill and the task force for pension reform, when they cut the 653 police and fire pensions down to 2, I sent the speaker a text message. Now that's extreme, Mr. Speaker.
That's like having a heart attack, and then the doctor tells you, well, you need a new heart.
Yes.
And you going, well, that's going to the extreme, but if that's what you need, if that is what you're going to need, and all these other things in between, it's not going to work. It's just going to delay. It's just going to delay the process.
Yes.
This is what you need.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would be radical and stubborn in my perspective than to show inaction.
Well, I don't see you as being radical. I see you as being realistic.
Thank you.
You being realistic about the situation.
And you're not being stubborn. You're focused. And see, this is the thing they don't understand. We know what the problem is.
Yes.
We know what the solution is.
Yes.
And we know there's multiple solutions. We know they can do something to fix it, and they won't do anything. And so they call you stubborn because you won't just say, well, you just can't do it, but you're not going to say
the only thing I've heard is the progressive tax, something to put on the people that's making more money. That's the only thing I've really kind of heard on the floor. I haven't heard any of these other ideas, other possible ways of addressing it.
But Denise, let me lay this out. Let me lay this as the foundation. Because see, for a long time, I thought that you needed progressive income tax in order to get the results you want. And after watching what happened in Indiana has a flat tax of 3.05%. Ours is 4.95 flat tax. Indiana fund their schools by way of the general fund. What do that tell me? That tells me it doesn't matter if you don't have a progressive income tax. You can still fund your schools by way of the general fund. That's what I walked away with. And now my perspective is totally different now. Because
I think your focus, if the focus were on the children and the education of our children, of our future generations, because I know as we sit, they're bringing people here from the Philippines on visas to work.
Yeah.
And many to come and educate our children in our schools, because we're not educating people and bringing people out that can do the work.
You're right.
And so if our focus is truly on our children, then I don't think we would have an argument about this. But this is not about our children. This is about people holding on to their positions. This is about not making changes in the way they've been doing business.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're fighting
But
against.
then the other kicker, and this is where racism rears its ugly head. Because when you look at what happened at the 1969 Constitutional Convention, at the educational piece at the convention, you had one white delegate to stand up and tell the majority that he disagreed with them. What about the exceptional children? And when you read the language, you ask the question, who is he talking about? He's talking about white kids. Okay. Now, the problem was none of the other delegates gave this one delegate any pushback. Because they didn't push him back, that lets me know they probably went along with what he had to say. Because they was down there fighting to get fairness and equity and equality on how you fund the schools. But they could never agree on what that looked like. And because they did not agree, they kicked the can down the road and they said at the convention, let the future legislators deal with this issue. And here we are, 55 years later, and look at the mess we're in. You got the rich school districts over here. Their kids are going to Taj Mahal, uh, country club type of environment, where our kids are from the poorest of poor communities. They're getting a Yugo next to not a Volkswagen, a
Rolls
Pinto,
Royce.
a Yugo and a Pinto type of education.
Yep.
But if we raise the money statewide and made it equitable, our children should get the same type of education as the white kids get up in New Trier. That's the type of education all these kids should get.
Right.
There should be no difference. And what we have to understand, either we're going to pay for it on the front end or the back end. I like the front end much better.
Okay, well, let me ask you to do this. Our people, a lot of people are not well informed about
Yes.
what's going on, and they do not know all the specifics of what's going on. And you did mention other ways that we can enhance the school funding.
Yes.
And I think you also mentioned the ways in which consolidating the schools can enhance the school funding. If you
Yes.
can detail those out tonight so people will have an understanding of what this actually looks like.
Well, Gary did the AI analysis. And if you can talk to that, Gary, that would give folks a little bit more perspective that we can do this.
Yeah, what we're talking about now, we're talking about the ways of funding the school, right? Funding.
Yes.
Well, basically, I took what the doctor had, the tax doctor had, and he said he had the octopus, which is it's 8 different ways, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
the 8 different ways to fund the school. And so what I did was I said there's got to be more ways to do it. And so using AI will go out and do research for you. Is what it does. It doesn't make things up. People think it makes things, but it doesn't. What it does the same thing you might do, but it can find a lot more data a lot faster. So I asked it to give me first. I said, give me 10 different ways to pay for the schools, to fund the schools. And I mentioned Illinois. I said Illinois basically needs to find ways to fund the schools other than property taxes. And it came out with 10 different ways. And then I said, well, what about 15 different ways? It came out with 15 different ways to fund the schools. And it looked at it looked at the casinos, look at what is it, the pot sales, it looked at
Cannabis.
everything we do. gas, maybe a few cents on the gas tax. Add to the gas tax, and it found the last thing I did. It was 20 different ways, and what it did was I asked it to do an actual numerical analysis, and it took our budget and it assigned certain amounts to to, to fill up the amount of money we need to pay for the schools. And it came back, and that part's hypothetical because that's up to what the people want to do. But it showed that we can do this, and it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult at all, and it's just a matter of doing it. And the one thing is, once you fund the schools using that method, it doesn't really affect anybody except for it lowers your property taxes by the amount you're paying to the schools. It lowers it 60 with the 60 to 50 to 70%. Your property tax will go down. And the thing is, it doesn't, it's one of these things that a feasibility study would include that. It would
Yeah.
include a way. And the thing is, everybody don't understand that just do the study and then come back with the results. And then tell us why you can't do that. And we got 16 casinos, right? We got CBD, or what do you call pot sales, right? And then we got the
Gaming.
gambling. We got the online gambling. We got all this stuff going on. And if we can just tax those, not a lot, just enough to fill up get the amount of money we need for the system. And it's not that difficult. And it's one of these things that I wish I can go through and remember a number of different ways, but they talk about the casinos. They talk about the
Cannabis.
CBD. What else?
Cannabis.
Did they mention
Yeah,
TIFs?
cannabis. They
No,
talked about.
TIF has nothing to do with this.
No, not TIF. Yeah, TIF is actually it's a way to get businesses to come in and open up their business,
Right.
and they
Okay,
give
well,
them a tax.
I read where they said recoup surplus funds from TIFs.
From TIFs, right? That's right. They can do that, but what usually happens is,
but you
when
wouldn't.
the TIF runs out, sometimes they leave.
But if
They don't want to, right? Because the taxes go up.
if you took the schools off the property tax system, TIF wouldn't be in the equation.
Yeah, it wouldn't, right? It
Because
wouldn't even be an equation.
of the fact that you can have a 2 to 3% educational fee on everything.
Yeah.
You go to a movie, it's an educational fee on that ticket. You go to a play, a ball game, football game. You get on an airplane. You go get your hair cut. You go get your hair done. You hire a lawyer. You go get your shoes shined. Those are services.
Real estate sales. That's another. When you sell your real estate,
yes.
I mean, this is not a difficult thing to do, which is
No,
really
it's not.
bugs me when they say they don't want to do a feasibility study. That, to me, that's kind of disgusting, man. Because they should at least be willing to do that.
Well, we need to hold the speaker's feet to the fire, sir.
Yeah,
where did you come up with this 137%?
Well, let's give our speaker's name so people know.
Emmanuel Welch is
Emmanuel
Speaker of the
Pritzker.
House. You should call his office in his district in Hillside, in Springfield. Call this office, and you ask his people, where did the speaker come up with this 137% increase in the income tax when we know that's not true?
And one more question. Ask him, what is his solution for the long term, the problem? What's his long term solution? Because if he's not going to do anything, then he is not going to fix the problem.
No, it's not.
And see, and you know what? When you ask people questions like that, they can't get out of it, because it's like asking somebody, okay, where you gonna get gas for your car? If you know they can't get gas, and they know they can't gas for their car, they have to answer the question. He has to know what are you going to do for the next 3 years, the next 4 years, 5 years, 10 years before he leaves the system. We have to know what he's going to do. And if he can't fix the problem, then what's wrong with doing a feasibility study? That is something that if he can't answer that question, then he's not doing his job.
He needs to get out of the way,
Get out.
and bring.
Exactly.
He needs to bring our bill to the floor, shell it, and get it passed. We got 3 meetings coming up, folks, at Argyle Garden on this coming Saturday. Which would be April the 19th.
Yeah, I might not be able to make that one.
And that would be from 11:30 to 1:30. Hold on a second. And then the next one would be in May, and the next one be in June. Having difficult with my
So do we have deadlines here that we need to be trying to meet?
We got into May. They'll be back in session all the way up until May.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as we were told, they got plenty of time to get this done.
So he's saying that he did not ask you to leave, so he should be willing to have a meeting with you.
Well, he don't have to meet with me.
That's a good point.
We need him to get these bills passed.
Mm-hmm.
He have a super majority vote in the House and the Senate. And as he told us when we met with him a year ago, he said, I need 60 votes in the House. I need 30 in the Senate to pass the bill. And then the governor would sign it. So we're saying to the Speaker, you have the authority to get your caucus to vote for these 2 bills. Then you should do that, Mr. Speaker.
Mm-hmm.
We're counting on you, Mr. Speaker, to help save this state, to stop people from losing their properties, to stop people from walking away from their property. We got a sister in the NAACP, can't afford to pay her taxes. Gary got a compadre who done worked all his life and got to keep working just to pay the taxes.
That's right.
I ran into this man in Springfield in the tunnels, 74 years old. He said, I got to keep working just to pay the taxes. He lived up in Buffalo Grove. He said, I'm not rich, but I got to still work just to pay the taxes. That ain't right.
No, that's insane.
Grandma, grandpa should not lose their property because we don't want to do what's right in this state, because we think we should take your dollars. We think we should take your dollars and keep this bloated bureaucracy that we created. Folks, if you feel like I feel, and I make it perfectly clear, I'm doing this for you. I don't pay taxes. Let me make that perfectly clear. I don't pay taxes. I'm a veteran, and I'm 100% with this. I'm disabled 100%. But I'm fighting for you. I do not want to see you lose your property.
And if people are spending their money, money like that in taxes, then they have less expendable, dollars to help keep the rest of the community going, to spend money in the business community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely right. And the thing is, people, it's not just losing their homes. It's like I was saying before, some people may not be able to take a vacation ever.
So, it almost sounds like this is some kind of diabolical plan or something,
It,
because this city tends to plan things years and decades ahead, and this sounds very unreasonable.
it is unreasonable. And the thing is, the fact is that the African American community seems to be suffering more than any other community. Doesn't I mean it's like so many other things that affect us more.
And
We
your
see it
speaker
all the
is a
time.
African American.
What's that?
I said your speaker is an African American.
Yes, I know, and and that becomes the topic, another topic of discussion. And the thing is, he's happy in his position, like a lot of people. I talked to people. One guy was paying $25,000 a year for property taxes, and he said it like it was he was bragging about it. I talked to another woman who paid 30,000. And she said I didn't pay $30,000. And like, and I'm
But
sitting there
you see,
thinking
but you
that's
see, Gary,
and that's disgusting because what they're
it
doing
is.
is saying just because I can pay mine, and it doesn't bother me, then you should be able to pay your $6,000 a year, even though your income is maybe 25,000 a year. You know that leaves you with very little money to do anything but survive. And so this is kind of mentality we got. And if you find that in the black community, you're going to find even worse in communities where it's mostly white people. They don't care. They're paying it, and they're okay with it. And
But
they're
you got to,
Well, it sounds like it's not just the white people, but
oh no,
it's people with money. This
exactly.
is becoming a class issue.
It's a class issue, and actually it's both. It's class issue
And
and a
we
race.
have our own people,
Yeah,
that you're talking about with these kinds of attitudes.
but people
well,
get
what
happy
we
and
what we
they're
found
comfortable.
out in California in 1978 when they passed Proposition 13, the 1%, that's who like this system because they benefit from this system. Okay, they can afford to pay 30, 40, 50,000 in property taxes. It don't hurt them. But for our community, and if you live in East St. Louis, Ford Heights,
Hmm.
Maywood, Broadview, you can't afford them type of property taxes.
Hmm.
And on top of that, as long as we continue to let this runaway train keep running down the tracks with no engineer running it, we're gonna fall off the cliff eventually. And I always like to give the analogy of the Titanic. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, it put a hole in the bottom of the ship, and the ship started to take on water. And it took on so much water that it broke the ship in half. Illinois is drowning in red ink. And I like to say that we are intelligent people. We are the adults in the room. Yes, we send people to Springfield to take care of our business. They get down there, and I like to use the analogy, they become Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Well, how they react down there is one way, and what they do when they come back home is something totally different. You don't even know who the hell they are.
Hmm.
But folks, when you listen to Denise and she talk about the business clientele, you cannot sustain this system with property taxes going through the roof. And where do the bulk of the money go? To all these school districts, folks. Some communities have 4 and 5 school districts within 1 or 2 blocks.
Right.
That is insane. And if we don't come together and fix what's wrong, what type of legacy are we going to leave these kids? What are your grandchildren? What are their grandchildren? Their grandchildren going to say when they look up and they say, you know what? There ain't hardly nobody in Illinois because they can't afford to stay here. That's how serious this situation is.
Well, family,
if we be the same.
If we haven't learned anything tonight, I think the message is there needs to be a change in the way our schools are being funded.
Yes.
We do need to be looking at all of these school districts that we have.
Yes.
We do need to be looking at this top-heavy administration.
Yes.
Administrative offices that we have in our school districts. We need to be looking at our government agencies here in Illinois. There needs to be a change. This idea, as you say, you're offering as a feasibility study as one way that it can happen, it can work. It's worked in other places, or it's something we can put on the table with other types of adjustments to it. But whatever, something needs to happen.
Yes.
And so we need to contact our Speaker of the House. I want you to give his name again.
Emmanuel Welch.
Emmanuel Welch.
Yes.
Who
Hillside and Springfield.
Okay. Hillside. You say Hillside?
Yes, that's where his office is located.
Okay. Hillside and Springfield. His main local office is
Westchester.
Westchester. Okay, but we need to be contacting him, and you need to be contacting your state reps.
Yep.
And letting them know that this is what there needs to be some discussion on the table about what they're going to do. Like I said, I've heard them mention, aggressive tax, and then that kind of went away. And you brought marijuana to the table. It's here, it's legalized. People are buying it,
and they make
cookies and smoking it and everything. They're making all kind of monies off of it.
Yes, they are.
They're making all kind of monies off of the lottery and gambling.
Yes,
online in the gas stations. Everywhere we have more casino gas station lottery machines here than they do almost in Vegas.
Yes, that's horrible, man.
So we try and catch up with Vegas.
Yeah. So there's lots of money here. There needs to be some adjustments. There needs to be some transparency. We have gone past the top of the hour. Gary, did you want to have something that you were trying to say before we go?
I just want to say that we just have to keep pushing and keep doing what we're doing. And the thing is, this is one of these battles that there's so much pushback that sometimes it seems like we're not making any headway. But the thing is, I think we are, and I think the education part is something we really should push even more. And we're looking to get large groups of people, like the tax doctor asked for, and explain to them what we're trying to do and what needs to be done and why their taxes are so high, and that they shouldn't be that way because other states have found a solution for this, and they don't.
And seriously look at all of these other ways. Get people armed with this information. People need this information. What are these other ways that we could do? So maybe next time you come on, we can spend more time talking about that because, like you say, our people, we need to be educated.
And we'll break down AI and the octopus.
Yeah, we bring up the actual documents, which I don't have with me right now. They're on my computer. I got multiple computers in my house. I got two upstairs. I got two down here in the basement, and I use the ones upstairs mostly for that stuff. So I use this
Okay.
one for Zoom calls and other
Okay.
things.
Well, you asked us if you could come back this week and next week, and we extended that to you.
Yes.
And so, because you're trying to get something done by May,
Yes.
So let's come back with some very detailed information as far as educating our people on this subject matter.
And we will be back
our options, what all our options are.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you so very much, Denise.
Thank you.
Right. And I want to thank you for coming tonight. I do want to say, remember to go to rrgbc.org and subscribe, where you can become a winner for our book of the month, How Black History Can Save Your Life, by Ernest Krim. And please support the book joint. Please support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. You can also make donations to our organization. We do accept donations because they help us to do the work that we are doing. And I just do want to thank you all for being here tonight. And I want to thank you for the wonderful work that you are doing, and just keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank
but
you.
most of all, support Black businesses.
Yep.